Hello and welcome to Wavelength Tuition, and this Saturday we are going to find out just exactly how to revise and how to stop revising wrong. So there's so many habits that students fall into and we really want them to avoid it. So Mel from Superminds Tutoring has come along and she's going to be our expert in this, and you're going to tell us all about it together with some science to back it up. So thank you so much for coming on, and I'll pass over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking everything revision this morning. And hopefully I'll give you some things that you can go away with in terms of how you can then be doing your revision correctly. If you haven't already checked out, there was an amazing one that you've already done on revision. I think it was around December time. And as I was going through that, there were so many great things that you'd mentioned. There was like the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, how our brains just can't hold on to that information and it just starts falling out. There was a whole thing about post-it notes and how you can place them around rooms. There's also in terms of revision and in terms of the length of time that you're spending revising. So if you haven't gone and checked that out, I highly recommend going and checking that out first and then watching this afterwards. Okay, so my kind of opening thing, 95% of students are revising in ways that doesn't actually help our brain. So if we're using the science behind what helps our brain, we can use that to do the things that are going to make that information stick and stay in your head. But lots of students are doing things that just aren't quite helping them. And I'll go through what some of those are in a moment. So things like just highlighting notes, that is not a thing that is going to help make that progress forward. The other big one is rereading through textbook. It's quite tempting to go, I had my lesson, I've got my notes here, and I'll just read through them. But all of these things aren't making those big jumps and progress forwards. Cramming the night before, I'll head into this a little bit more in terms of our brain capacity, and actually cramming doesn't help our brain to be able to keep that information there. Recopying out notes, it can be tempting as well to go, oh, they're a bit messy because I was writing them quite quick in lesson time, I'll rewrite them out. And also that's not something that is helping moving you forwards. So I'm all about being strategic and doing things that are really going to help that information to stick in your brain. I'm really about putting the information in so that then we can take it out in those exam times as well. So what do those things do and why do students do them? Well, they can feel quite familiar. Okay, they can feel a bit safe as well. Revision is something that's often new and a new habit that we're building, and we want it to feel quite nice. So we'll pick things that we go, yep, I can do that. I can recopy out my notes. I can highlight bits, and we feel quite safe and quite happy with that. I'm quite a fan of that. There should be a little bit of challenge with revision. As much as it's a new thing and it's a new habit for some of us, we need to be doing things that are stretching our brains, okay, are stretching our neuro parts in our brain so that information is able to stick. It's only when it's sticking in there and going into our long-term memory that we're going to be able to then be retrieving it out under those exam conditions. So we need to do things where it's going to get in there and be able to stay in our brains. So hopefully I'll go through some more of those myths and that are going to stop you from doing amazing in your exam success. Some of the neuroscience behind our memory as to why some things will work to help it stay in your brain more than others, and the evidence as well that is used. And so hopefully at the end, some things that you can take away immediately and some changes that you can take and do instantly to help you. Okay, so my myth number one, more hours equals better results. If you're a student watching this, you have probably got a range of people as you're going into some of your mock exams, and you've normally got the student who says, I've done nothing, I've done no work. And then quite often as well, you'll have like the student who's like, I was up all night, I was up till 3 a.m. So the whole staying up, I'll just spend hours, that isn't gonna help. Also, doing long hours isn't going to help your brain as well. And as I said before, I'm more about being strategic. So not just I've done hours and hours of time. It's more about being strategic of making sure that that time is really beneficial to you and that you're using it in the wisest way possible and the way that's going to get the biggest improvements and changes for you. So it's not about the length of time, okay, but it's about what you're doing in that revision time. So I really like this bit of information here. 50% better retention of that information. So that's you being able to hold it in your brain and be able to pull it out again. With retrieval practice, so that's where you're doing something where you're having to pull that information out of your head rather than just doing the rereading. So some of those things I said about not doing, highlighting, rereading over, or maybe rewriting out your notes, get 50% more improvement with doing activities where you're actually retrieving it from your brain. So some of the science behind that. So Radiga and Carpike were the people who were testing on this in terms of the 50% students scoring better from doing retrieval activities. So it's about us doing things where we're building those neural pathways, where we're building that pathway in your brain to get to that information. So thinking about doing things like doing flashcards, thinking about doing past papers, thinking about doing blurting, all of these things where you're having to find that information in your brain and be able to pull it out again. That is going to be stronger for building those pathways in your brain. So what you can do, I just mentioned there about blurting, so writing out everything that you can remember and putting that down on a page. Quite often I'd normally specify that down to a topic. My other big one of that is, in case you're someone who doesn't like a plain white piece of paper, is folding your paper into 9. So folding it in 3 and then 3 again the other way, and then filling out your 9 boxes with information linked to a topic, and then going back and reviewing which bits did you not quite remember, and they're then the bits to then find and go back over to make sure that you get them next time. Using your flashcards, I'm a big thing that flashcards should be used. They shouldn't be made once and made perfectly and prettily and then never touched again. They should be a working resource that you're using, that you're putting them into piles of which ones you did know, which ones you didn't know, and coming back to those ones that you didn't know. And I'm also quite a big fan of practice exam questions in terms of finding out what you don't know. So the ones that you didn't quite get correct, they're the ones to go back to. Right, my other big thing is benchmarking. These might be called personalised learning checklists in school if your school is using them. So some schools do in terms of handing these out, and some of you will be aware of what this is already, and some of you might not. So this here, I've picked out a physics paper one, and this has got a list of topics that might be covered in that. And then the student here has pulled out on the right-hand side, they've red, ambered and greened with the circles there as to how confident they are with those topics. So it's about grading those topics as to how well you know them. How confident would you be if the question came up on that topic in the exam time? Now, what we typically find, or I quite often find with students, is they'll go to the areas that are green because they feel a lot happier with them. And they'll go to, so here, like our conservation and dissipation of energy. That section is largely green. We've got one little bit of amber. And I quite often find that students will go to that green area. However, the areas that we need to go to fast are the red areas, because they're the ones, when I talk about being strategic, they're the ones that we're going to make the biggest gains and the biggest changes. So actually going to those red areas, they're the ones that we need to do our revision on fast. Those green ones, if we know them already, we can probably wait almost until those come up in a past paper rather than spending our time doing lots of revision on those areas. So it's about being strategic. As I said, it should be a little bit of challenge in there with your revision. And I get why students do it. I get they want the revision to feel nice, and so it's much easier to go to the area that you're quite confident in, the topic that you're confident in, but it's actually flipping that around and going to the topic area that you're not so confident in and going to that area first. So if you're not already using these, I'd strongly suggest getting your topic list up for your subject and using that to help you. Okay, my myth number 2, cramming works if you work hard enough. So this idea that I can definitely make it work for me. Well, if I spend all night up, it will stick in my head and it will definitely work for me. Your brain doesn't work in that way. Your brain needs time to take all that information that it's had during the day and to be able to consolidate it. Your brain can't do that without having its sleep. I'm a real big one of making sure that you aren't just spending your whole time revising, that you're getting in sleep, that you're eating well, that you're also exercising, and that you're doing all of those things to help your body so it can be in the best place possible. What we also need to do is spaced practice. So coming back to material time and time again, but over a period of time. Just doing one session isn't going to help that information to stay in your brain. Your brain doesn't work in that way. Your brain needs time to consolidate. It also needs time to make those connections and to build up those connections over time as well. So we can see here, in terms of that space practice, is really far outdoing cramming of that information. So we've got some research here in terms of your brain being able to consolidate that information. It needs to have time to make those connections. So coming back to that information after a day, maybe 3 days, a week, then 2 weeks. So coming back to that information time and time again is going to help it stick in your brain. Short sessions daily beat long weekend marathons. We're seeing much more of that coming through. I know quite a lot of math subjects, students have been set sort of short daily amounts to do, rather than here's your full 2 hours of work. Your subject areas might still be setting you, here's 2 hours of work, or here's an hour, or I want you to go and revise for that length of time. But thinking about building it down into short sessions so that you can start helping your brain to keep that information in there. Well, I've put start revising 6 to 8 weeks before exams. I mean, I'm a big fan for even earlier than that, but we're probably about 6 to 8 weeks from exams starting right now. And if you haven't started, start now. It's better than sort of leaving it completely. You can start now because you've still got time to be able to go back over information in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time. So then you've come back to that information over a period of points. Okay, so that information can go in. Also, the other thing with cramming, your brain cognitively can't hold lots of information. So there's some research done by a man called Cohen, and he suggested that we can only actually hold between 3 to 5 bits of information at any one time in our brain, and that's in our short-term memory. And we're trying to get that information from our short-term memory into our long-term memory. Prior to that, there was also some research done that reckoned, there was a guy called Miller, and he reckoned we could hold between 7 plus or minus 2, but they actually reckon it's more now between 3 and 5. So we need to help our brains with that, of that it can only hold those short bits of information. So we need to help our brains that it is then able to take that information and place it into our long-term memory stores. If we're trying to overload it and just cram it, it just can't physically remember all of that information. So that's another point there of not your brain just can't hold on to it all. As much as we would love to think it can, it just can't. Okay, so practice makes perfect, and doing the same thing over and over again. There will be some fans of sort of rote learning and kind of just repeatedly doing things. However, that's not the best way in terms of helping your brain. So what we need to do, so I really like this bit in terms of being able to problem solve and being able to identify what the questions are asking you, because that's a key skill that you actually need for exam times, of what is that question asking. I think a key one that I use to go back to maths again is actually it's lovely in a lesson where you're maybe learning all about bearings, or you're learning about angles, and you go through the problems and you're like, yeah, I've got this. But when the exam comes up, those questions don't have a nice little title against them to say, oh, it's this lesson that you're in, and it's this topic title, and this is the little task that you need to do alongside that, and this is the methodology that you need to be using. And so you need to, as a student, you need to really quickly be able to go, right, this is what the question is asking me, this is the method that I need to use, and here I get to my answer. And you need to constantly be flicking from those questions to work out what you need to do and identifying that problem type. So if you can start bringing that in to your learning in terms of your revision, of interleaving and going between different tasks, that is really going to help. So this doubling up 2 times in terms of your test scores, rather than just doing that, I'm going to do a whole thing just on one area. If you can interleave, that is much, much going to help your brain in terms of being able to problem solve. So we've got the doubling of the test scores, it's a massive amount in terms of you've been able to do that and being able to problem solve. I think half of the battle with the exam papers is sometimes knowing what is the question asking me. So if you can build that into your revision and mixing it up, that's really going to help you. I am a big fan of only revising for between 20 and 35 minutes on one particular area, and then moving on to the next one. And I'm not saying as well that that break in between should be a massive break of like have an hour break in between or anything like that, but switching up the activity that you're doing so that then your brain can then go into the next one. So it could be, I still get some students who are doing like their whole, say, hour-long session is going to be on, say, biology, but in those 20 minutes or sections that they're doing a different topic area within that. So they're interleaving what they're actually studying within that time. So they're not just staying on that one type of thing. I don't know if it's quite right, but my understanding is that this came up, we learned about this during the wartime, and some pilots on a plane, and that they were spending all day learning about the plane, and they realized they just couldn't do this whole, well, I'll just spend ages and ages on one thing. And that they realized that if they learned about the cockpit for a short period of time and then went off to the propellers and then basically went round the different areas of the plane, they were able to retain that information. And particularly like a crunch point like that, where they needed the people to learn the information fast, to be able to train to be a pilot really fast, and that we needed to recruit people. They learned that was the best way in terms of people learning. I hope that's correct in terms of that story, because I thought like that was a lovely story that I had. But yeah, so going around doing the different activities, that's really going to help you. I think this just goes over all of the same things, those mixed questions. So I am a big fan of practice papers, not just to see how many did you get right, but then to that skill of having those mixing up of those questions, of going from one topic to another topic and going between those different ones, but then also really using it for what bits did I not get get correct, and then going back to your benchmarking that you did, your personalized learning checklist. Right, did all those topics that I thought I was good at, was I good at? Those ones that I didn't think I was so good at, have I actually improved? And I now understand them and I can answer questions on them. So going back and checking your learning against those checklists, because I'm a big fan as well that these things aren't static, a bit like making your flashcards, they're not just a one-time thing. So going back over that information. Okay, so these I think are all the key bits in there. So our retrieval practice, our spaced repetition, our interleaving, these are the key 3 strategies that I promote in terms of you being able to do this and you've been able to be strategic in your revision. Okay, these are the 3 things that I think you should be doing, and thinking about one of these, could you implement these straight away? So what are you doing at the moment? Are you someone that's just rereading? Could you change up what you're doing? Are you someone who's trying to do a marathon session? And are you someone who isn't mixing up? Which one of these 3 are you going to pick straight away that you could be doing, that you could be changing right now, that's going to make the impact before your exams? So if you're someone in year 11, your exams between 6 and 8 weeks away, what could you be picking that you could change up now that is going to make that biggest impact for you? I'm a big fan. Small changes create big results. Sometimes it's those small little changes that can have a huge impact. So if you don't do anything else, pick one of those and take that away with you. Fabulous. And on to questions. Have we got any questions?
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Mel. So yes, I have 101 questions, but I'm going to whittle them down to maybe a few. So we talked about sort of those 3 myths. Which one of those do you see most common across the students that you've helped mentor?
I think that first one of where it's the whole like I've reread over things, I'm highlighting, or they tell me they've made some flashcards, they're like it's just not working. And when you start breaking it down, I'm like, well, what are you doing with the flashcards? Or what are you like, how else are you revising? Or you're telling you've made notes, but it's doing more than just making those notes. And I think that's probably the biggest one that I see, that they tell me they're revising. and they're like, but it's just not going in, or it's just not working. And then when we actually come down to it, of what are they actually doing, where are they getting their information from, it's actually having those different tools. So I very much talk about it being a toolkit as well of our revision, having those different tools and different things to do, rather than just highlighting, rereading over things, because we know they're not the most strategic ones to use. I'm a big fan of using things like mind maps. The blurting, I find that's quite Marmite with my students as well. Some love it, some don't. But it's a really helpful one, because can you access that information in your brain? Have you got the neural pathways built up there that you can access that information and come to it really quickly when you do get that question in exam time?
Yeah, I also definitely know that I've heard students feel like they're revising because they're highlighting, which then comes back to sort of that like spending a lot of time and it's not actually going in. So definitely seeing that and making sure that students don't fall under that trap.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest barrier you've had when you've taken a student that hasn't been able to revise? What's sort of the biggest barrier to them being sort of using your three main: retrieval, practice, spaced repetition, and interleaving? How have you taken them in that journey? What's like barriers, and how have you got them to being a really good reviser, let's say?
Yeah, and I think, as you touched on there, like, I was just thinking, actually sometimes it's that bit of procrastination that they don't always realize is there, that they tell me they've been revising and they've spent 2 hours revising, and I talk about, well, how did you start off that revising? And actually the first 20 minutes was them going, right, well, I'd got on my revision plan that I was going to do history, and then I didn't know what to do with history, and I didn't know where to get my resources from, and they actually spent the first 20 minutes going, right, what shall I do with history today, or shall I go back to what we did last lesson, or shall I pick something that we did last term or the term before? So one of the early things I do with students is doing that benchmarking and going through with them, well, what topic areas are the key ones, then breaking it down. Right, you've now got this great big list, let's pick up the top 3 that you're going to work on first of all, and have those just written out, so that then you're not spending that time and that initial part going, I'm revising because I'm sat here and I'm meant to be doing history, but you've already got it strategically written out. I also get them to break down, where are your resources? Are your notes that you've got from lesson, are they enough? Do your school have an online platform or a workbook, a digital textbook quite often? And then it's amazing, because then they start going, oh yeah, I have got that. Yeah, we were given this resource. It's like, okay, so you have got all these repertoire of things to your hand. Let's really detail out what they are for that subject. So then actually you've got this list that then, right, I am doing history, right, these are my 3 topics I need to go, I've got my resource here, right, what technique am I using today? Am I going to be doing my blurting? Am I going to be using my flashcards that I've done? Am I actually going to be doing some work of like my memory palace, like working out what it is, or am I getting some past papers out? And having that like real plan already, so that the time isn't spent feeling like they're revising, but actually they've spent 20 minutes going, where could I get the information from? That's probably like a big one where I start with students.
I feel like this is so much more than just a revision timetable, though. It's actually sort of building the habit of knowing how to revise and what to revise. So you're going into a revision session, it doesn't just say history or whatever subject, it says history, but it says these topics. So on that benchmarking, you said you go through it with students. Would that be something you offer, or there sort of, I know at Wavelength we'd be happy to do that, but would you say recommend going to someone else, maybe going to a teacher? Sort of where do you feel like that's the best to do? Is that best to do with someone, or can they do it independently? I feel like it's really important to have that benchmark ready. So let's make sure we get that right. How would you get that right?
I think absolutely, like, include your teachers in this. Like, quite often they've already got like a list of topics. So I said, some schools are like, they call them personalised learning checklists, and everyone's got them. So I do get some students going hello to me going, oh yeah, I have got them. Yeah, I did them at the beginning of the term, or actually they are in the front of my book. And it's quite amazing that they are there quite often. So involve your teachers, because your teachers probably have got that, or can give you that list, or can head you in the right way. Because my other thing is going, right, well, what exam board are you, to make sure that you're getting the right topic list. Some students come to me and I will go and find out their topic list. They'll tell me what, as I said, what exam board, what subject they're doing, and I will go online and find them. So you can go and find them online. As long as you've got those 2 bits of information, that's going to help you. So you can find them and then, using them from that point onwards. So you can do it independently, but also, speak to your teachers, because likely they've already got a list somewhere that you can use.
Would you ever re-benchmark?
Yeah, so I'm quite a big fan of that. These are working documents, and they should move around. You should get to a point that going, actually, all of those reds of, what did I have earlier, stuff about energy and physics? I'm not a physics teacher, but going, I now get that. I'm a couple of months on. I've been going over that information. I can now move all of those to green, because we'd like to hope that by the time we're near to exam time, that actually we're turning most of those reds into greens. And seeing that progress along. So I'd highly recommend going back to it at strategic points and going, right, maybe now at an end of term time is quite good, of going, right, which bits do I now know that I didn't know confidently last term?
So we really like the we love at Wavelength that we always like to involve parents into the whole process. How would you keep parents involved? Because some students just want to be left alone to revise. Some students want someone there just sitting in the room. Some parents, some students want to literally be like with their parents revising. Some want to be their friends. But I know lots of parents want to be involved in revision, because then they sort of know how well they're prepared their child is. So what sort of ways parents can be involved without being sort of intruding in that sort of space, which I know from when I was doing my GCSEs and A levels that I wanted my own space. Please leave me alone.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I completely get it. Like, parents, you want to be involved, you want to know, but there's also an element of like, I don't know if I can help. Where can I help? What can I do? I think it's having that dialogue and that open conversation about revision, without it being that pestering every day. What have you done? How much have you done? Where is it? Kind of thing. So I'd suggest they sort of like a couple of times a week or weekly check-in about where they are, what they're doing. I do advocate to students to involve their parents. Some of them do take me up on that, but not always. But they're a person who's in your household who actually you can take those flashcards to. They don't have to have all the knowledge, because sometimes that can be scary as a parent going, well, it's years ago since I did my biology or my chemistry or that particular topic. But actually, like, give them the flashcards, get them to quiz you, involve them in that, and they can be helpful. Or because also, if they're, as a student, if you're able to explain to another person, you know that information. So if you're able to explain it to your parent, you're showing that you've got that information embedded in your head, and that you're going to be able to pull it out in the exam time. So I'm a big advocate of them using them in that way, and just talking through in terms of where they're up to, what topics they are struggling on, or also celebrating the wins and the successes. Like, they will be your biggest champion and your biggest supporter. So if you're like, look, I now get the topic of energy, I now get this, like, they will be the ones who will happily celebrate along with you. So use them in that way to be your cheerleader and your biggest supporter, because they will be.
And I also think it's really important for when you're benchmarking, or say you're blurting, and you then get to a topic, you're like, oh, I've forgotten this. And I always feel like there's this, oh no, panic moment, when in fact, I feel that's a celebration. So I try, and whenever I tutor someone and we get something you don't know, I'm like, this is great. Like, we now can learn it together, and we now can be ready for the exam. So even if there's a topic that's sort of, you don't even remember doing because you were, I don't know, on a school trip, or you had football match away day and something because of a Wednesday, like, you could still learn it, you could still have time. So thank you so much, Mel. Thank you for details here, and we'll share them across our social media. It's been great having you, and I've learned so much, and I know that our students across Wavelength and Open Board will be able to learn. So if you have any inquiries, please contact Mel or contact us at Wavelength Tuition. And thank you so much. Bye.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.